Hello, everyone. I'm really excited to be here today to share with you all here at the Health Expo about your mental health and wellness. And we're going to be talking about expanding your emotional intelligence or your EQ in order to strengthen and support your mental health and wellness. So, I'm Jodie Solberg. I am a mental wellness coach. I'm a success coach. I'm a certified master hypnotherapist. I'm a speaker, I'm an author, and I've been working therapeutically as well as in coaching for well over 20 years now, helping people to be able to break through the mental blocks, those things that get in our way and really keep us stuck or stop us from moving forward. So, whether that's overcoming the negative self talk and those limiting beliefs that can really undermine our confidence and our belief in ourselves, or if it's things like past hurts and traumas, things that just really stick with us and we just keep having to deal with over and over again. And one of the ways that you can really strengthen and support yourself is through expanding that EQ, that emotional intelligence. So today I'm going to talk about what that means, why it's important, and really how to increase and expand it in order to improve really all areas of your life, because your EQ influences every single area. We're whole people. So everything that's going to affect us emotionally is also going to affect us in our relationships. It's going to affect our mental health. It's going to affect our physical health. It's also going to affect, just how we move through the world and how successful we are in different capacities. And so, first, I want to define what emotional intelligence is. We hear about IQ. That's something that we really think of as set, don't we? We think of that as something where that's just a set amount. You either have an average IQ or high IQ or low IQ, and it kind of is what it is. Well, emotional intelligence is different. So, EQ or emotional intelligence is the capacity to be aware of, control, and express your emotions, and to be able to also handle interpersonal relationships. Right? So, that is something that is really a key to success, but it also can be expanded. It's not a set point. It's something that you can learn and grow and improve over time, no matter where you are in your journey in this life. And so when you're looking at emotional intelligence, things like self-management and relationship management, awareness of yourself, but also social awareness. So awareness of what's going on around you are the things that we're going to be talking about. So in school, and we're talking about, standard intelligence, the things that we think of like, okay, if you're really great at math, or you're really great at languages or science, or you're a history buff, you think of these things that are taught in school. We're not necessarily thinking about that emotional intelligence, which is how self-aware are you? How are you able to communicate with others and understand where they're coming from? How are you able to navigate relationships and set boundaries? These aren't things that are taught in school in those math or science or social studies or language classes. It's very, very different. Generally, we learn by modeling, right? So other people showing us how to do these things. We might not have had the best models, or we're just trying to figure it out in DIY. Unless you're like me and I have degrees in psychology and sociology, and I study these things at a very high level. So unless you choose to study emotional intelligence, most of us aren't even really sure what that means. And so I'm going to give you some points today on what that is. We're going to dive deeper into that. And then, like I had mentioned before, how to expand it for yourself and how that's going to help support you in your life with your mental health. So, first, really being open, right? Openness to learning, openness to communication. Okay, this is so important to help you to gain awareness of yourself, to lead yourself, to empower yourself, and to embrace change. Okay, and also be accepting of others. outside of ourselves who maybe have a different worldview or a different perspective. It's important to be open. So I'm going to ask you today to just be open to that, to be open to the information and open to learning and growing. And then building strong relationships is something that EQ can absolutely help you with. It can help you to attract healthy people to you and also help you build trust and credibility with others and allow you to better connect with them, to be able to understand where other people are coming from and to really build those solid connections. Self-awareness is something we're going to talk about a lot today. Okay, so self-awareness to identify your own strengths and the areas that you can grow in or that you can strengthen even more. And then empathy towards others. We're definitely going to be talking about that because that is where we can understand how other people are feeling. And then decision making. If you've ever found yourself unable to make a decision, you're not quite sure what you want to do, or you're having a hard time communicating your needs, right? That decision making and the being able to communicate your needs and being able to set boundaries. There's so many different areas that emotional intelligence is going to help you with. You're going to be able to make more confident and well-informed decisions. You're going to be able to understand the different options available to you and be open to the different possibilities. And then when we're talking about other people and relationship management too, being able to handle conflicts. So it's not just setting the boundaries, but what happens when there haven't been boundaries, or what happens when they're not being respected. When you need to really be able to handle a situation with emotional strength, with some resilience, having things that happen to us not affect us over and over and over again over the long term, being able to bounce back from those things. And we have been needing these skills, right? Especially these last few years. There's been a lot of upheaval, a lot of change, a lot of uncertainty. And there is a lot in life. And so to be able to look within yourself for guidance in those challenging times of uncertainty is very, very valuable. So emotional intelligence, the way I think of it, is it helps us to respond versus react. So you think about when you have just an emotional instant reaction to something. Emotional intelligence can help us to pause, can help us to think it through, to process it, and then choose how to respond. There's going to be events that happen. I call them activating events, right? So you have an event that starts, and then there's a thought about that event, and there's an underlying belief in there too, where that thought comes from. Right? We have a belief about ourselves, about our situation, or the world around us. So you have an event, and then you have a thought, and then that is followed by an emotion, and then there's a reaction. There's some kind of a behavior after that. So they all flow together. However, a lot of times it happens so quick, it's so fast that we don't even notice it. And so emotional intelligence can help us to stop, notice what those thoughts are, where they're coming from, what we're feeling, and then choose how to respond versus just reacting emotionally the way we maybe have for years, for decades, for our whole lives. We can increase our emotional intelligence. And I always say when you can manage your emotions, you can manage your life. And so this is a great way to learn how to do that. So again, your EQ is just your ability, right, to recognize, understand, and manage your emotions and the emotions of people around you. And so there's really 5 main areas of your mental and emotional management, right? We've got our self-awareness, we have our regulation, right? Emotional regulation, our ability to be motivated from within, our empathy towards others, and then our social and communication skills. Now, what has been found is that people who have higher emotional intelligence have things like less stress, less anxiety, right? They're better able to adopt more of a growth mindset, to be able to look at things and situations as opportunities for learning and for growing. Right? And again, making those decisions, being able to navigate your way through life's challenges are all really, really important skills. So when we work on these 5 areas of emotional intelligence, we can strengthen our support of ourselves, which can help to manage our emotions and keep us nice and stable. It can keep us in that zone where you feel like, I'm good, I've got this. I can make this happen. I can handle all the things that are coming my way. Right? That is really valuable for your mental health and wellness. We also know it's very valuable for your physical health and wellness because everything mentally and emotionally and physically are tied together. They're interconnected and really truly can't be separated completely. Because whenever you have a physical symptom, like the activating event I was talking about, that's going to cause thoughts coming from beliefs and it's going to create emotions. And then it can manifest in even greater symptoms, right? Maybe you start having some health anxiety and then your pain or your symptoms are exacerbated or vice versa, right? Your physical is going to cause things and your emotional can cause things, right? It all goes in a cycle. So I want you to think of this as not just mental health and wellness, but overall health and wellness when we're talking about emotional intelligence, because it's going to help us to be more in tune. And that's the first key area of emotional intelligence is self-awareness. So this is going to be awareness, of course, of your emotions and your thoughts, but it can also help you be more in tune with your physical body as well, which can be extremely helpful. We are taught from a very young age to disconnect. And it's just the way that our world is set up. When we're kids and we first go to school, things start getting a little different for us, right? We're on somebody else's schedule, we're on someone else's timetable. And so we're told you have to wait for the bell to be able to go get a drink of water, or use the restroom, or eat something. So when your body tells you, I'm hungry, I'm thirsty, I need to go to the restroom, we have to wait until we're told that it's okay to do that. And so we end up overriding those feelings. Or if you're tired, you just can't take a nap in the middle of class, right? Or your different emotions, same thing. We're taught to override, override, override. And so that's why self-awareness is so important to be intentional about, because knowing your emotions, understanding your moods, understanding your cues. A lot of times we'll have stress, and again, it will come out in physical symptoms. So, recognizing that stress before it manifests or before it gets worse can help us to do things like recover from and prevent burning out, can help us to be able to know more about ourselves, our minds, and our bodies, and help us to be proactive versus reactive with our health. Self awareness is also so important for knowing your strengths, knowing those things that challenge you and are areas of growth for you, and also knowing your values so that you can be more in alignment with them. A lot of times people will say, get in alignment. And it's hard to know what that means. No one really teaches that. And so that's something that's important to me to, really learn that self-awareness and to teach that to others and to hone that so that you can feel whether you are in alignment or not. You can follow your gut. You can feel that intuition. Now, also, we want to understand how our moods and our emotions and our thoughts and our behaviors affect us. We also want to know how they affect others. So it's important to be aware of that, aware of how you have an effect on your environment, both positive and negative. Okay. And then the next piece, the next area of focus is going to be the self regulation. So, awareness to me is always that first step. So becoming more aware, and that can happen in a lot of different ways. I'm going to share some more ways with you, but that self awareness piece of stopping and doing check ins with yourself is important. Checking in to say, okay, how am I feeling? What's going on? Okay, we're going to share some tips for that here shortly. But as soon as you have the awareness, then you have the opportunity for self regulation. And so this is where the impulse control comes in. This is where thinking before you respond, right? Before you speak, before you act, right? That emotional and behavioral management piece will help you support yourself and help you to reach your goals. It's the beginning of a brand new year. And so if you have a goal to set, if you've set an intention or a word for the year, or let's say you have a habit that you're changing, self-awareness and self-regulation pieces are really important because then you can be aware of what maybe those triggers are for you with the unhealthy habit and where to put in the healthier habit and help you to regulate yourself, right? To be able to manage building that new habit. Whenever we're trying to do something new and you have new learning, you have a new neural pathway that's getting formed. Think of it like a road, right? And at first, it's a pathway and it's just like a path in the woods. There's brush and there's trees and it's untouched. And we have some new learning. So you start to walk across this path and you start to trample down the grasses and the shrubs and you're kind of forging your way, right? Well, we have an old habit or an old neural pathway that doesn't go away when we have new learning, just we're choosing the new one each time. Well, the old one is cemented in, it's like a freeway, right? It's just really easy to take the freeway, but we're going to make a new road, we're going to make a new path. And each time you are self aware and you control those impulses and you self regulate and you choose, right? Intentionally, you think and then you act and choose to respond and take that road, it forges that path, just wears it in till it's cemented in. And then it's still a choice, right? Which is where a lot of times people get tripped up because then life will happen. Something will come to stir the pot. And it's just so much easier to go back on that old freeway. Right? So it's important to have that self awareness and that regulation piece so that we can continue to choose the new path, right? That new learning. And that is what's going to help us with the internal motivation, right? Making positive choices that are going to move you forward towards your goals. Right? And having passion or a strong why or purpose behind you of why you're choosing that path is going to help you be internally motivated. We need to know what that is. Right? That self-awareness piece is going to be really helpful for that as well. And then once we're aware of ourselves, be aware of others. So that's where empathy and these, social and communication skills and boundary setting, things like that come in. So when we're looking at empathy, we're showing that we're understanding another person's situation that's outside of our own or someone else's emotions. And some people are really naturally born with this. It is my top highest strength. That has always been my number one top strength. Right. So if you know what your top strengths are, if empathy is among, your top 5 or 6, then, that's something that's a wonderful thing. However, sometimes people don't realize that that is also something that you can grow in, that you can expand, and that you can harness as a strength. A lot of times I'll see people who have empathy, really high empathy naturally, but they'll feel like it's more of a curse than a blessing. They'll feel like it's a weakness versus a strength. And it's because they haven't grown in this area of emotional intelligence to learn how to harness that. When I was younger, it was harder to manage my emotions before I learned a lot of these skills. And I learned so much of this, of course, in school for what I do, but also through my own just personal growth too, learning how to become more self-aware, to be able to self-regulate, and to be able to harness my empathy so I can use it as the true strength that it is. And having that high of empathy, a lot of times people won't know how to guard and protect their own emotions and their own energy, right? They won't have that self-regulation piece. And so they're feeling pulled, they just ride the wave of other people's emotions, and it's to the detriment of themselves. And so empathy can go both ways. It can be something you can be really high in, but still also need to do some work in this area to help you to increase. Like I said, we've never arrived. We're always on that journey of growth and discovery. So we can always get stronger in any of these areas. But some people are naturally really empathic, but can do work on strengthening around that. And then some people, this may not come really naturally to you, and that's okay. You can grow and you can learn how to do that. Absolutely. And then the social aspect, right? So that's kind of just understanding other people's positions, other people's situations, other people's emotions. And then with the social aspect, with communication, handling conflict, building and maintaining healthy relationships, healthy boundaries. All of these things are really, really key, as well as an emotional intelligence. So this might be an area of work. Again, this is an area that we either have been modeled in healthy ways or not. And so if you didn't have someone to sit down and teach you, here's how you handle conflict, here's how you set a boundary, that's something that I do. That's what my job is, to help people to navigate through these things and grow in these areas. If you haven't had anyone do that, take time to work through it. Absolutely. Get that support, get that guidance to learn how to really increase your emotional intelligence in this area. You will be so amazed at how that improves your relationships, whether they be personal or professional, and really just completely positively impacts how you move through the world. Now, I said we can increase all of these. So we're going to talk about some ways to do that now. Okay, I'm going to move to what can we do? What are some steps to increasing your EQ? And these are some of the things, of course, that I did myself. We all have that personal work to do, and that I teach people professionally as well. And the first one is mindfulness. So, really being mindful, increasing your awareness of yourself and others takes intention and being present and being really mindful and intentional about this, being an observer of yourself and others, right? Listening without judgment. And we're going to talk about that for you, because we tend to be more judgmental of ourselves than probably anybody else, right? So we can take some time to get to know ourselves. And I mentioned briefly a little bit ago about check-ins with yourself. So really stopping every so often, right? If you are noticing your emotions rising or falling, right, you can stop then, or just taking periodic times. You can do this in the morning, you can do this in the evening, throughout the day. Take just a minute to stop and think and be present, get fully present in your body. One of the techniques that I like to teach for mindfulness, to just stop and do a check-in, is just breathing techniques. So you can do something to slow down your mind and slow down your body so you can tune in. So for example, you do 4, 7, and 8 breath. You do a few of them, 3 to 5, where you just breathe in for 4, and count at your own pace, and then hold for 7, and then out for 8 when you're ready. That can be helpful before you go to sleep. That can be helpful if you notice the anxiety coming up for you. It can be helpful when you get stressed or when you just need a break. And if you do that 5 times, it's 90 seconds. It really doesn't take that long. But whatever you do to pause, take a pause, right? Really important to stop And then do a check-in with yourself. How am I feeling? What do I need in this moment? Right? That could be a question. Like, is there something you need right now in this moment? Okay. So how are you feeling? What are you needing? And then how can you shift to that? So if you need to shift to that, hey, how would you like to feel? Or how would you like to respond to the situation? This can be a great technique for when there's that activating situation and you're like, okay, I need to choose how to respond. So you take a breath and then you choose which direction you want to take it. Okay. So the other thing you can do on the flip side of being mindful with others is you can stop and listen to what they're saying without judgment. Now, when you're listening to yourself, also doing that without judgment is important. Okay, where am I at? Well, where's the other person at? How are they feeling? What are they thinking? Find out, hear them, and really listen without listening to respond. Listen to understand instead. You use active listening, where you really are listening to find out what's going on with the other person with no judgment, regardless of your experiences, just what is happening with them. How are they feeling? What are they thinking? So that then you can stop and choose how to respond and give a thoughtful, mindful response. So asking open-ended questions, being able to really take that moment to understand their needs, right? So we're going to listen first to understand. We're going to be able to listen without judgment and ask questions, open-ended questions like who and what and where and how. I like to avoid why. Why sounds very judgmental. Why did you do that? Why do you think that? Right? It sounds like a lot of judgment there. So we're going to leave that aside and really just want to understand their needs, right? Support them in identifying, okay, what are they needing? What are they needing me to hear in this moment? Right? Asking those questions. And then you can convey back your understanding with sincerity. That's going to help increase your empathy. It's going to help increase your communication skills. So really amazing ways to increase your EQ. Now, also, enlightened vocabulary when it comes to emotional intelligence can be absolutely growth filled, right? If you can enlighten and expand your vocabulary emotionally, you can expand your capacity for growth in that area of self-awareness, emotional awareness of yourself and others. So instead of just like mad, sad, good, bad, happy, things like that, how are you really feeling? So, there are different ways, right, to do this, to really identify, but one of them is just through journaling. That's something you can do with your check-ins. You can link journaling in with those check-in points where you can figure out, how am I feeling? And get a little deeper with it instead of just happy or sad or bad or good. What is it really? Are you frustrated? Are you irritated? Are you bored? Are you elated? Are you excited? And get deeper with those emotions, expand that vocabulary, and that's going to expand that emotional intelligence. And it's going to also help you to read other people better as well when you're expanding your ability to see how they're feeling and to understand them. And then it's also really important to practice forgiveness and grace with yourself and with others. So we talked about the listening without judgment, asking the open-ended questions, but also, when you're listening without judgment and you're asking these questions, remembering that we're humans and we're not perfect. There is no such thing. Again, we've never arrived, right? We're all in our own growth, and other people are coming from a different perspective. They've had different life experiences than you have. You have different life experiences than they've had. And so you may not line up on everything, and acceptance of that, right? Acceptance of how we're feeling and how others are feeling, acknowledgement, acknowledging the validity of how we feel and how others are feeling, and really helping yourself to overcome some of those negative thought patterns that come from that judgment or come from their self talk, and being able to have compassion with other people, but also learning how to have that same compassion with ourselves. So, one journaling technique that I think is really helpful in this area is to write down that self talk. Write down those things that go through our minds. We tend to think the same things today as we did yesterday, as the day before, and the day before that. 80% of those things are going to be very similar. We're going to have some similar veins, right? Some general like categories of, you know, a lot of times it's about self-worth or deserving. What are those things for you, right? What's coming up for you in that self-talk? And so you can journal around that. And the things that we say in our heads, say them out loud. It can be scary, to be honest with you, because a lot of us have very negative self-talk. A lot of people really beat themselves up. And so when you say it out loud, it may sound offensive or ridiculous or shocking. But then I want you to take that the next step further and imagine saying it to someone else. Would you ever talk to someone else the way you talk to yourself? Chances are probably not. Pick someone that you care about. Pick, your children, or a partner, right? Someone that you love and you wouldn't mistreat in that way. Right? What would you say to them? I tell clients, pick me if they want to. When they want to pick someone neutral, would you ever say that to me? And they're like, oh gosh, no, I would never say that to you. And about being, worthless or undeserving or, horrible at this or that or the other, right? So then if if I were to say that to you, or your child were to say that to you, whoever you're envisioning, what are those compassionate statements you would say back to them? Role play this. You can role play. And then you can pretend and practice, right? Okay, so if I say that to myself, I'm going to treat myself with some kindness and some compassion as well. So I'm going to say those things back. I'm going to respond to myself. The next time that old highway comes out and I go right back to that negative self talk, what path am I going to choose? How am I going to respond? It's not always the first thought that matters, because again, that old highway is just ingrained. And so we go right to it. But it's all about the response and what we choose. So it's the power of the second thought of, okay, how am I going to respond to this situation in a different way, in a healthier way than in the past? How am I going to respond to myself if it's inner dialogue? How am I going to respond to someone else if you've had an unhealthy dynamic with someone else? How am I going to set a boundary for myself and or with others that is going to help me to have better mental health and wellness, physical health and wellness, better communication, healthier relationships, right? And so it's important to show empathy. It's also important to be able to show compassion and grace, right, for ourselves and for other people, so that we can resolve conflicts, so that we can set those boundaries, so that we're able to move forward and grow from situations. And so that's the next step here, which is having a growth mindset. Looking at every experience as an opportunity to learn and grow and do better next time, and to be able to evaluate those interactions. So that's something else you can journal around, is your interactions with others, right? So you can journal around challenges. You can journal around your interactions. How did you respond? How could you respond differently next time? Yeah, how did you respond to those challenges? But I also want you to remember to acknowledge what went well. So many times we focus on what didn't, that we don't focus on the positives, right? If it didn't go your way or it didn't go well, or it was a perceived weakness or a failure of some kind, also want to acknowledge and accept that everything is a learning opportunity. And so, really evaluating those interactions or those challenges or those things that happen to find the lessons. And that's going to help you foster more positivity. Right? So, surrounding yourself with support is really important in this process. So, the learning, it's being here for things just like this. It's finding support and guidance from therapists, from coaches, from healers, like being able to have that support around you, other people who are growth focused and who can model these tools and resources and skills for you to help you boost your emotional intelligence, to help you to be able to strengthen yourself emotionally, get to know yourself from within, and see things from different perspectives. Having people around you that can give you opportunities for those growth points, right? Who can challenge you, can help you to better relate to other people when you surround yourself with people who are also growth minded. And so as you're growing, remember that increased emotional awareness, that stability, and that resilience, it doesn't just happen overnight. These aren't things that we inherently just know or that we're necessarily taught intentionally. And so now we have the opportunity to go ahead and take that work on ourselves. That's that inner growth and that inner personal work that you get to choose to do. So whether or not some of these skills come naturally to you or not, some of them are going to require more effort and some of them are just going to require more development. It's important to remember that we're always in the process of learning and growing and improving. And that the greater your emotional intelligence or your EQ is, the more emotional strength you're going to develop that's going to help you handle whatever comes your way. And it's going to allow you to help and inspire and connect with others, to motivate yourself from within and create positive changes in your life, in your mental health, in your physical health, and in your community, in your family, in your career, right? And the world around you. So remember to get the connection and support that you need as you're working through this. If you are someone who really recognized, hey, okay, this is really important. Everything that I was talking about today with emotional intelligence, it's really important. And it's something that you want to prioritize this year, something that you want to grow in. Feel free to connect with me to get that support. You can find me a lot of different ways. You can find me on social media, but the best way is through my website, which is on the screen. It's psychedupsuccess.com. I encourage you to go to my resources page. There are amazing resources on there. There's my guide to mastering mindfulness, so you can increase your self-awareness. I have an emotional empowerment course and coaching program to help you to increase your emotional intelligence. You can even book a free call with me. So go ahead and check out my website to connect. And also, I just released a new workbook. So I have some journals and workbooks around these topics to help you to be able to really work through some of this personal growth and progress yourself. But I hope today served and supported you in learning all about emotional intelligence and how it can really strengthen you from within, as well as those relationships that we have with each other. So thank you so much for being here today.